Nobody believed what they saw that day. A young, cocky fighter laughed when he saw an elderly woman walk into the gym. What happened next? It didn't just shock him, it stunned everyone watching. It was a normal Tuesday morning at Iron Core Gym, where people of all ages and fitness levels came to train, spar, and build discipline. The air smelled like sweat and determination. The thuds of punches hitting pads echoed in rhythm, and the trainers moved around, correcting form and shouting encouragement. That's when Ray walked in, tall, built like a tank, with an air of cockiness that made heads turn. He wore a sleek black GI with a shiny black belt, tied tightly around his waist, his chest puffed out like he was entering an arena, not a local gym. Ray had just moved into town and was new to this gym, but he acted like he owned it the moment he stepped in. He gave everyone quick glances, not to greet, but to size them up. When he reached the mat, he loudly introduced himself to a group of trainees, claiming he had trained under some of the best and had dominated every spar at his last dojo. His voice carried across the gym like a trumpet. At first, people tried to be polite, nodding and smiling, but within minutes, Ray started offering unsolicited tips, correcting people's punches and kicks, even when nobody asked. He laughed when someone stumbled, made fun of a teen's footwork, and even challenged a couple of advanced fighters to spar just friendly practice, he said, but his tone was filled with arrogance. The trainers exchanged quiet glances. They had seen guys like him before, strong but overconfident, skilled but disrespectful. Ray's presence was loud, both in voice and attitude, and it didn't take long before people started stepping away from him, not out of fear, but out of annoyance. Still, Ray didn't notice. In his mind, he was the star of the gym, the alpha everyone should look up to. Little did he know, his biggest lesson was walking through the gym doors that same day, and it wasn't going to come from a young, strong fighter. It was going to come from someone nobody expected. Just as Ray was finishing another round of showing off his moves, the gym door opened with a quiet creak. Most people barely noticed at first, but a few heads turned when they saw who stepped in. It was an elderly, black woman, likely in her early 70s, dressed in a plain gray tracksuit and worn sneakers. She had silver-streaked hair tied back neatly and carried a small gym bag that looked just as aged as she did. Her steps were slow but steady, her posture upright, and her eyes sharp with quiet confidence. She didn't speak much, just nodded politely at the front desk and made her way toward the training floor. A few younger members whispered among themselves, curious and confused. No one had seen her before. Some assumed she was someone's grandmother, just tagging along. Maybe, there to ask about a yoga class or use the treadmill. But she didn't head toward the cardio area or sit on the sidelines. Instead, she walked directly to the mat, unzipped her bag, and took out a pair of old but clearly well-used grappling gloves. Her movements were calm, practiced like this wasn't new to her at all. That's when Ray noticed her. He smirked and tilted his head mockingly. "You sure you're in the right place, ma'am?" he asked loudly, trying to get laughs. A few people chuckled awkwardly, but the woman didn't react. She looked at Ray, gave him a soft smile, and said, "Just here to warm up." Her voice was gentle but carried a quiet strength that made a few nearby fighters pause. Ray, never one to miss an opportunity to show off, turned to the others and said, "All right, guess we're letting anyone on the mats now." The trainers observed from a distance, intrigued. Something about her calm presence felt different. No fear, no hesitation, just focus. She began to stretch, each motion deliberate and smooth, far too fluid for someone her age, or at least what people expected at her age. While most still underestimated her, a few started paying closer attention. Something was definitely unusual about this old lady. Ray couldn't resist making a scene. As the elderly woman continued her stretching, he walked closer, swinging his arms in exaggerated warm-up motions and smirking for attention. "So, what are we doing today, Grandma?" he said loud enough for everyone to hear. A few people chuckled, not out of cruelty but because they didn't know what else to do. The woman, still calm, looked up at him with a peaceful smile and said, "Just moving a little. Been off the mats for a while." Ray scoffed, waving at one of the trainers. "Hey, put us in together. Let's have some light sparring, real light." "Of course," he said with fake generosity, raising his eyebrows dramatically. The trainer hesitated but nodded, "Only if she agrees." The woman simply nodded, stood up slowly, and tightened her gloves. Her back was straight, eyes focused, and movements precise. There was no fear, no confusion. Still, Ray assumed she was just being polite, maybe trying to prove a point before backing out. "Don't worry," he said with a grin. "I'll go. Easy on you." The people around the mat began to gather. Phones stayed in pockets, but the energy shifted. Curiosity replaced awkwardness. There was something about this woman's calmness that held attention. She walked onto the mat and bowed with respect. Ray mirrored her, still grinning, bouncing on his heels like a showman. He threw a few shadow punches into the air for effect, clearly playing to the crowd. "Hope you've got a good insurance plan," he joked under his breath. The woman just stood in her stance, balanced and centered. A few seasoned fighters watching started to sense something wasn't right, or maybe something was very right. Her posture was too exact, her steps too sure. But Ray wasn't paying attention. His ego had taken over. To him, this was a joke, a chance to make everyone laugh. He thought he'd dance around her for a few seconds, throw a fake punch, maybe let her land a soft tap. What he didn't realize was that he had just stepped into a match he wasn't prepared for, and the joke was about to be on him. The bell rang softly, signaling the start of the sparring match. But what happened next made that gentle sound feel like a thunderclap. Ray stepped forward lightly, still carrying that smug grin, his hands lazily raised as if he were about to play with a child. He bounced from foot to foot, circling her, throwing harmless jabs into the air just inches from her face. "Come on now, don't be shy," he teased, clearly trying to humiliate her in front of the quiet, watching crowd. But the elderly woman didn't flinch, she didn't blink, she didn't even shift her weight unnecessarily. Her eyes followed him with the calm focus of someone who had been here hundreds of times before. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Ray stepped in with a quick, playful jab, aimed at her shoulder. Not a real punch, just something to provoke a reaction. And that's when it happened. With a smooth twist of her body, the woman ducked under his arm, pivoted to his side, and swept his legs out from under him in one clean, effortless motion. It was so fast, so sharp, and so graceful that it looked like a choreographed move in a movie, except it was real. Ray's body slammed into the mat with a loud thud that echoed across the gym. A few people gasped. Some took an instinctive step forward, and Ray, he lay there stunned, staring at the ceiling in disbelief, trying to process how he went from cocky fighter to flat on his back in less than 2 seconds. The woman stood calmly, breathing evenly, her hands relaxed at her sides. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't say a word. She just looked down at him and offered her hand to help him up. For a long, awkward second, no one said anything. The gym was completely silent. The trainers exchanged glances of surprise and knowing respect. Ray took her hand slowly, still wide-eyed, as she pulled him gently to his feet. That moment didn't just silence Ray, it silenced the whole gym. Because in that moment, everyone realized they had just witnessed something rare, real skill, true humility, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. As Ray stood back on his feet, still dazed and red-faced, the silence in the gym lingered like a heavy fog. No one moved, no one spoke. The elderly woman gently dusted off her gloves and stepped back with grace. Her breathing steady, her posture still perfect. One of the older trainers, Coach Malik, finally broke the silence with a slow, respectful clap. Others joined in, not mockingly, but with genuine awe. Ray looked around, confused and embarrassed. Rubbing the back of his neck, who is she? He asked quietly, more to himself than anyone else. That's when Coach Malik stepped forward with a smile and said, "That's Miss Lorna Johnson, former national jiu-jitsu champion, 3-time gold medalist. She retired over 25 years ago." A murmur spread through the crowd. People turned to look at the woman with new eyes, not as someone's grandmother, not as a sweet old lady trying to stay active, but as a seasoned warrior with a past they never imagined. Lorna gave a modest shrug and said softly, "I don't like to make a fuss, I just enjoy the art." Ray's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The same hands he had mocked just minutes ago had once gripped championship medals. The same calm eyes that watched him fall had stared down opponents on professional mats decades ago. And while he had come in boasting about belts and trophies, she had said nothing and proved everything. Humbled, Ray looked at her and nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "I didn't mean any disrespect." Lorna smiled kindly and patted his arm. "Just remember," she said, "real strength doesn't need to prove anything. It just is." That line stuck in everyone's mind. For Ray, it was a moment of transformation. For the gym, it was a moment of revelation. And for Miss Lorna, it was just another quiet day doing what she loved. Not to impress, not to compete, but to honor the discipline that had shaped her life. She picked up her bag, gave a soft nod to the trainers, and left the mat, leaving behind respect, silence, and a powerful lesson no one would forget. After Miss Lorna quietly stepped off the mat and made her way toward the locker room. The gym was still wrapped in silence, but it wasn't awkward anymore. It was a respectful stillness, the kind that only follows something extraordinary. Ray stood motionless for a moment, watching her walk away, his pride deflated but his heart strangely full. He had never been hit so hard, not by her sweep, but by the truth. Everything he thought he knew about strength, age, and experience had been shattered in seconds. Over the next few days, Ray's behavior in the gym changed completely. He still trained hard, but the arrogance was gone. He listened more, spoke less, and began asking the older trainers real questions. And when Miss Lorna returned the following week, there was no teasing. Instead, Ray greeted her with a respectful nod and stepped aside so she could warm up. Slowly, others began to approach her too, not to challenge her, but to learn. She never bragged, never lectured, She shared little bits of technique, stories, when asked, and always emphasized control over power, respect over pride. The younger fighters began to train differently with more patience, more humility. Her presence had shifted something deep in the gym culture. People were more supportive, more focused, and even the loudest mouths thought twice before judging someone based on age or appearance. As for Ray, he became one of the most dedicated students in the gym. He even admitted once, during a group stretch, that takedown changed my whole mindset. Miss Lorna chuckled and replied, sometimes, falling down teaches more than standing tall. From that day forward, she became something of a quiet legend at Iron Court Gym. Not because of what she had done in her youth, but because of what she reminded everyone: real strength is silent, earned, and always respectful. And while many fighters came and went, Miss Lorna's story stayed alive, passed on in whispers between rounds, in the way students bowed before sparring, and in the silence that followed every lesson she gave. The silence that said, "We are still learning." If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Subscribe to Deep Wounds for more powerful true life stories that leave a lasting impact.